Good afternoon, everyone from India, and good morning to our attendees from Germany. A very, very warm welcome on behalf of the Indo German Chamber of Commerce, along with our knowledge partners today, Reudel and Partner Consulting Private Limited. And we would like to cordially invite you to our very special session today afternoon. Take what you get, governmental incentives and subsidies for manufacturing companies in India. So as the world economies, they basically struggle to revive from the overwhelming impact of this special COVID-19, the Indian government has also introduced a lot of initiatives, and especially the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan package, to basically provide boost to the manufacturing sector in India. And in this economic package, we also have come up with production linked incentives, PLI schemes, which have been announced for the 10 new sectors where the Indian government has actually outlaid a very impressive budget um, um, uh, in the financial year 2021-2022. And further in line with also the motto of Make in India of the Indian government, initiative have been taken by states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat, who have also launched various industrial policies which intend to deliver world class infrastructure, provide various subsidies and incentives to establish India as the global manufacturing hub. Of course, we are all very optimistic. These are very special times. We have to be patient. But at the same time, these kind of initiatives by various government, and especially right now, currently in India, are very much appreciated and are very much needed as well to be able to give boost to the manufacturing sector. So in this webinar today, we have Mr. Anand Khetan, partner Rodel and partner, who will basically take you through these incentive schemes and policies to understand key objectives and benefits available to the manufacturing companies in India. So, Anand, very warm welcome to the session today. We are all very much looking forward to hearing from you. And just few words about Anand. Anand Khetan is a qualified chartered accountant and leads the customs and GST practices of Reudel and Partner in India. Anand has more than 14 years of professional experience and has been working for Reudel and Partner in India since February 2013. And he's also been providing various consulting topics, litigation and compliance services to MNCs in indirect tax matters, including GST implementation, support, tax restructuring, and representation to the governmental authorities. Anand, you've been also a speaker at various seminars organized by educational institutions, various trade chambers, and also a guest lecturer at the University of Munich and University of Biberach. So, Anand, once again, a warm welcome, and the floor is yours. And after hearing from you, we will have few question and answer session. And yeah, so exciting session. Over to you, Anand. And ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the session hosted today by the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for this really good introduction, I would say. And I thank IGCC for organizing this webinar. The topic or the interest on this topic was, quite apparent from the number of participants who registered for it. I already said that. And on behalf of Rodel and Partner India, the entire team, all 6 offices, I welcome all of you who made it a point to join us today. We have sort of dared to take up an extremely large topic, which is multifaceted, and each element of this topic is worthy of a separate webinar, which may run into several hours actually. However, today what we would attempt to do is to take 2-3 very important limbs of this topic, which, as Sonia mentioned, which includes PLI. I would also be taking you through some state industrial policies, so the incentives that the state governments can give you, and also some relevant updates on the foreign trade policy. And I would try to summarize them, I hope, in 45 minutes. And due to this, there is a possibility that, or rather, it's quite obvious that we will not dig deep into a lot of these policies, as the time would obviously not be enough for decoding these schemes. But the point is that when we try to discuss individual schemes, may also not be relevant for a vast majority of participants, because these policies are sector specific, these are state specific, and therefore they may not apply to a vast majority of audience. It has to be really seen based on where your company is located, in which state, in which sector you're operating, etc. So it has to be really customized based on a specific company. So the idea here is to provide you with enough background information on these schemes, so that you can go ahead and maybe commission a detailed review of your own entitlements, in case your organization is basically eligible. Now, what I feel is that this webinar is perfectly timed and perfectly named also. And why do I say this is because, as Sonia also gave a good background, last 16 months for India as a nation were obviously quite difficult, and we had huge number of infections, worrying rate of vaccination, and this risk of upcoming third wave, which may bring along another set of economic issues for companies. In times like this, most of the business have suffered, and here every industry or a new investor would certainly like to take whatever he gets, and especially when that impacts the working capital. But anyway, let's go to where this whole topic started. Given the size of our country and the vast population, obviously the issues faced by the government over the last few months were quite unique. You cannot compare it with other countries, European countries, for example. These included issues like, I would say, maintaining the growth rate, as India was one of the fastest growing economies for the last 5 years, and government also wanted to continue to attract foreign direct investment from various countries. They also had an added issue of controlling inflation, because we had huge supply chain disruptions. The demand was there, supply was not there, the inflation kept on rising, and at the same time they also had to take care of sector wise issues, like we had liquidity crunch for small and medium sized companies. There was crisis in the agricultural sector due to the agri reform bills. The most industrialized cities were also the ones which were most impacted, actually. So with all of this, one thing which the government felt immediately as an issue last year was that India lacked manufacturing capabilities in several key areas and was heavily dependent on imports. And in case of supply chain disruptions, which happened in the last 15, 16 months, the situation was bound to go out of control. And this sense or this feeling led to the launch of the Atmanirbhar package, or the program to make India self-reliant. In this package, special focus was given to sectors where India clearly lacked manufacturing capabilities, like electronics. We had this scheme on for mobile phones and consumer products. There was a scheme on specialty chemicals, which includes APIs and active pharmaceutical ingredients. There was a scheme also for solar manufacturing, because India used to import a large quantum of solar PV panels from China and other countries. So the focus was that they have to really build up these manufacturing capabilities, they have to generate employment, and they have to create demand. So this is the program which gave birth to sort of this one time and limited on various fronts performance linked incentive scheme. And why I call it limited on various fronts is because it is really limited in terms of the financial allocation, the number of people who can really get a benefit out of it, because there's a stringent criteria based on which the participants would be selected, and also the amount of incentive which can be given to a particular participant. And apart from this, we also know that the state governments have also been for several years attempting to boost manufacturing and trying to attract investments in the respective states. So some states like Maharashtra have had industrial policy for several years. I remember since 1965 or 1970 Maharashtra has a industrial policy, and it has helped such states who have had these industrial policies for several years. However, with the changes in the last few years, implementation of GST, the states had to go back to the drawing board, and in the last couple of years, many states have come back with revised industrial policies. So we would be looking at industrial policies from Maharashtra, from Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu, the three policies which are quite important for German companies. So we will be basically going through them. So I would, first rather, start with the PLI scheme, which, as per the whole setup. So I just hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, Anand.
Yes.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can see it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the PLI scheme, and I have sort of already given you a small perspective about where the scheme basically started, which included India basically jumping up on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, on the Global Innovation Index also, and being the largest recipient of one of the largest recipients of FDI in 2019. So all of this and the COVID effect basically led India to launch this Atmanirbhar package with a huge outlay of 28.5 trillion rupees. And several champion sectors were identified for manufacturing, and these were clubbed with several structural reforms in many sectors. For example, we have the labor law reforms. The bills have been introduced; they are supposed to be implemented very soon. We had tax reforms. India introduced one of the lowest income tax rates for manufacturing concerns in 2019, which is 15%. And this is now being added up or loaded with incentives and subsidies, both by the central government and the state government. So we now call it sort of, cascading of incentives, because if you do it right, you can really get a lot of subsidies, benefits from the respective state and central government authorities, which will really help you in your business operations. So starting with PLI, the whole concept of PLI, as I said, was to make India a manufacturing hub. This is sort of an added or an add-on to the Make in India campaign. The idea was that India should not suffer due to supply chain disruptions. We should always have, at least in critical areas, local manufacturing setups, so that we are not dependent on other countries for supply chain related issues, and the supply is never sort of restricted because of such issues that we faced during the last 16 months. Including this, the idea was to, obviously get more investments into India and, generate more employment opportunities, because India is, as we know, one of the youngest countries in the world with a large working population. So with this, the sectors that you can see on the right hand side, these were the targeted sectors: mobile manufacturing, critical pharmaceutical drugs and APIs, medical devices, electronical technology and IT hardware, automotive components, pharmaceuticals, telecom, textiles, food products, PV modules, white goods, and specialty seals. So these are the targeted sectors under the PLI scheme, and each scheme for each sector would be launched separately, with a separate outlay, with a separate implementation agency, and the companies who are operating under these sectors would have to apply to the implementation agencies, and respective selection criteria would be put in place, mostly going running into 2 or 3 phases, and the selection would happen, and over a period of 6 to 7 years, or maybe 5 to 10 years, depending again on the scheme, the subsidy would be rolled out. So what is the status of the PLI scheme for various sectors? I have just mentioned it here. So currently, most of the the European companies, especially German companies, are waiting for the auto and auto components PLI scheme. This scheme is still waiting cabinet approval. We will obviously, I'll tell you about this particular PLI scheme later on. I'm covering it separately. Then for advanced chemistry cell, textile products, and specialty steel, all these 4 sectors are still waiting for the PLI scheme document from the government. and what we currently know is only from news reports, etc. The application window currently is open for pharmaceutical drugs and white goods. So because the window is currently open for these two schemes, I'll be discussing these two schemes in more detail, because the companies who are operating under these two sectors can really make an application in the next 1 or 2 months, and seek incentives under the PLI scheme. So these two sectors I'll take in detail. And the application window is already closed for quite a lot of scheme, rather for sectors, which includes solar PV modules, which got closed I think on 30th of June, IT hardware, telecom, food processing, medical devices. These sectors, the scheme at least has been closed, because either the selection has already been completed, or the funds which have been or which were allocated to these sectors have already been exhausted. But then this is like an evolving topic every day. The government may come out and say that, okay, we still have certain companies which do not meet the selection criteria, and therefore they open it up. A lot of companies have still represented that they should increase the time limit because they were not able to apply within the prescribed timelines under the scheme. So it is still an evolving topic, and the government might open them up in future, or allocate more funds to them. So still, if you're operating under these sectors, you still have to keep your eyes and ears open. Let's then move to pharmaceutical drugs, the first scheme which I want to take up in detail. The background and the need, or the basis of the schemes, or the objectives of the schemes, are almost identical in every case. One is, as I mentioned, is to improve manufacturing, increase manufacturing. Second is to you know is technology transfer. So India really wants to reduce the royalty payments, and wants to get technologies transferred to India, so that we can make world-class products from India, which can be exported and domestically supplied. So the whole objective of this scheme is to enhance manufacturing, diversify products, technology transfer, and make India a hub for pharmaceutical drugs, which apparently it already is, but still to let other players come into the picture. Who's eligible? So any company, firm, partnership, so any legal structure is okay. You can still apply. You have to make an application under a specific group, A, B, and C groups. We will see what these groups are in the next slide. And these groups are basically based on your global manufacturing revenue. So if you are a overseas group, you have to see what is your total revenue across all countries where you operate, and based on this you will be basically divided into the three groups. The selection of the applicants would depend upon various criteria, which I have already said, but then in each and every sector, the selection criteria would be changed. It will be tweaked based on the industry requirement and the sector specific requirement. So for pharmaceuticals, the criteria would be that the GMI rather, for the group company in 10 years during the financial year 2010-11 to 19-20, that will be considered number one. Number two, what will be considered is the R&D expenditure which the group spends as a percentage of your global manufacturing revenue, and the number of manufacturing plants which the group owns or operates in India. So these three would be primary selection criteria, apart from secondary selection criteria, which would obviously include the nature of product that you are manufacturing in India, technology transfer, etc., etc. So it's a very detailed scheme, and companies operating would really have to go through the selection criteria and see if they really fit into the process or not. The total outlay is quite nice. It's 150 billion divided over the three groups. So this is the total outlay which will be spent by the government on the scheme. And as I mentioned, the scheme is open from 2nd of June 2021 to 31st of July 2021. So we have a 2-month window currently to make the application. Let's look at the target groups. So you have group A. From this group, 11 participants would be selected, and this group would have participants who have a global manufacturing revenue which exceeds INR 50 billion. Then you have group B. In group B, 9 participants would be selected, which would comprise of companies having GMR between 5 billion to 50 billion. And there will be a group C, which is sort of the MSME group as they call it. This will have 35 participants with GMR which is less than 5 billion. So in total, you can see it will be 55 participants would be selected from all the people who apply. And the criteria based on which the selection, as I mentioned, or based on which you will be selected under a specific group is also given in the table. So for group A, you have to make a cumulative investment in 5-year period, 2021 to 22, right up till 25-26. You have to make a minimum cumulative investment of a minimum of 10 billion INR. For group B, it should be 2.5 billion rupees, and for group C, 500 million rupees. This is the minimum investment that you have to commit to qualify under the scheme. You also need to have minimum sales for to be eligible under the scheme. The total sales have been kept quite low because government understands that companies would come in and set up their manufacturing bases in India. So in the initial year, or the base year as they want to call it, the sales might be lower, but then the companies have to have a minimum 7% increase from in their sales as compared to the base year. They have also capped, as I mentioned, it's capped at various fronts. So total incentive is capped at 10 billion, which is still quite a big number from my perspective. This is per participant, and then you can also get an additional incentive of up to 500 million INR. This depends on certain criteria. For group B, it is 2.5 billion, and for group C, it is 500 million rupees. So this is how the outlay will be given and the participants would be selected. What would be the rate of incentive? Now, this is given in this table. So for the year 2022 to 23, the rate would be 10% for products which fall under category 1 and 2, and 5% for products which fall under category 3. So basically what they have done is, for the pharmaceutical industry also, they have outlined various products which India really wants to give a impetus to, and these products have been categorized into list 1, list 2, and list 3. And if you are manufacturing products which are mentioned in category 1 and 2, then the rate of incentive which is given to you would be much higher. Because India really wants to promote these products, while incentive for products which fall under category 3 would be lower, because India already sort of has some sort of base for these products. But still, India really wants to promote them. So this is the rate at which the PLI would be calculated, and how it will be calculated, I have just tried to give you a small example. So for example, if your sales are 100 million in the year 2022-23, which is the financial year for India, then there's a sales in the current year, for example, is 150 million. That means your incremental sales is 50 million. So if you are a company which falls under group A and you are manufacturing a product which falls under category 1, so that means you will be entitled to an incentive of 10%. This 10% will be calculated on the incremental sales of 50 million. So therefore, your net PLI incentive would be 5 million rupees in the year 2022-23. Your incentives would continue for a period of 6 years. So as you can see, the incremental sales are calculated based on the base year, which is 1920, and as and when the sales keep on increasing with a minimum limit of 7%, as I mentioned, the percentage of PLI will be calculated based on the incremental sales. And you can see that the amount of PLI keeps on increasing every year because we have a increased incremental sales. Okay, so this is how PLI would be sort of, or is being implemented for the pharmaceutical sector. Let's now move to white goods. This basically includes air conditioners, because again, India does not have a huge manufacturing base for air conditioners, and LED lights. And LED lights obviously is a very, very important sector for India. They want to sort of promote LED lights on every front and to replace the traditional lighting systems. And therefore, this sector has been identified for last 4 to 5 years for customs exemptions and all sort of benefits. So the products which fall under this specific scheme include, as I said, air conditioners, high value intermediaries, which includes copper tubes, aluminum foils, compressors, which are used in air conditioning systems. Then they also include low value intermediaries like PCBs and valves, fans. Then LED lights, components for LED lights, which again has chips, engines, drivers, all these products which are components for LED lighting systems are also included in this scheme. And this would be implemented by DIA and would be monitored by the empowered group of secretaries, which is chaired by the cabinet secretary. The scheme window is open, and it is open till 15th of September 2021. So in case you are one of the manufacturers under this particular sector, then you can really think about making an application under this scheme. Now, who's eligible again? So I have again tried to summarize the scheme in short for everyone. You need to be a company incorporated under the Companies Act. The FDI has to be under the FDI policy, and you should be basically trying to get a greenfield investment or at least a brownfield investment in India for manufacturing. The large scale investments would obviously be given more priority against a normal investment. All these terms have been defined under the policy. So the higher is your investment, more number of marks that you will get for your selection criteria. And here in this particular sector, the government has not decided on the number of participants that it is going to select. It's a smart move, I would say, because it really depends upon the number of participants who actually try to make an application, and what exactly is their background, and based on the outlay of the scheme, the government would then finally decide how many people they would select for a grant of the PLI scheme. The rate of PLI under this scheme is between 4 to 6%, again on incremental sales. So the example that we saw in the last slide, a similar sort of calculation would be done under this scheme also. It would be calculated based on 4 to 6% of the sales, which is more than the sales of your base year. Okay, so and this would be paid for a total period of 5 years plus 1 year gestation period. So again, a 6-year time frame has been given for the disbursement of the PLI scheme. Again, I have given the rate schedule of the PLI, of how exactly it will be calculated. So for example, if your gestation period is 1 year, which is April 2021 to March 2022, so your base year will be taken as FY 22-23, and 6% will be calculated for 22-23 and 23-24, 5% for the next 2 years, and 4% for 26-27 on incremental sales. Similarly, if your gestation period is 2 years, that is from April 21 to March 23, then the first year would be 23-24 for your incentives. So 6% for first 2 years, 5% for year 3, year 4, and 4% for 27-28, which is the 5th year, again on net incremental sales. So the total incentives again under the scheme would be capped. So every company which gets selected would again the incentive would be capped, which will be decided by the government, and they have any which ways in this scheme at least capped the amount of net incremental sales that you can consider for PLI. So here for air conditioners it is 5 times the cumulative threshold of investment, and for LED lights it is 6 times of cumulative threshold investment in the previous year. So the total incremental sales cannot be more than this particular limit which has been prescribed under the scheme. So let's again look at a sample calculation which is quite similar to what I had given in the last slides for pharmaceuticals. Base year 100 million rupees, sales in the current year 150 million, incremental sales 50 million. So a calculation will be done based on 6% of 50 million, which will be 3 million. This is how your PLI would be calculated if you are a manufacturer of air conditioners with an initial gestation period of 1 year, that is from April 21 to March 22. So it is a very, very specific thing which really depends upon you as a company. What is your gestation period, in which domain are you operating, what is the benefits that you are bringing on the table for the government for you to be selected under the scheme. Okay, so apart from this, I would also like to cover 2 more schemes in quick succession. One is solar PV modules. Renewable energy is sort of quite interesting for European companies. So solar PV modules, basically India was a big importer, or rather still today is a very big importer of solar PV modules, mostly from China, but also from European countries. India also has some sort of a dispute going on with European companies, or countries rather, where anti-dumping duties were introduced on solar PV modules some time back. So India basically wanted to have or rather promote this as a sector, so that we have good manufacturing capabilities and high quality solar PV modules are manufactured within India. As you know, India gets a lot of sun, we all know that. So there is a lot of base here, opportunities to promote solar energy under the renewable energy umbrella or the scheme of the government of India. So under this scheme, who was eligible, I would say right now, um, greenfield new solar PV module manufacturing units in India. It can be a single company or a joint venture. And this was very important based on selection criteria, that the bidders had to fulfill specific parameters like extent of integration, manufacturing capacity, module performance, and the people who got selected had to set up a fully integrated solar PV manufacturing plant in India with a minimum of 1000 megawatt capacity, and that too based on silicon based technology. So it was a very, very specific requirement from the government of India, that they prescribed these are the guidelines. And the financial outlay was 45 billion Indian rupees for a period of 5 years. And the criteria was again quite similar. It was sales volume, the PACE BLI rate. There was something called as a tapering factor, which was given under the scheme. And again, what is the local value addition that you basically do in India. And as I said, the last date to submit the bid was 30th of June, so it's already gone. 9 days have lapsed. But then there is a high possibility that the scheme might get extended, or a second phase might be launched. You never know, so you have to really keep tracking it. And lastly, what I would like to cover under the PLI scheme is also on auto and automotives, rather automobiles and auto components. India is, I would say, a big consumer and a manufacturer of automotives and auto components, and a large interest of European companies, especially Germany, is there in this particular sector. What you can really see is that this sector suffered in the initial phase of the lockdowns. The demands have come back to sort of the pre-lockdown phase, and it is one of the largest employment givers in India, actually, this sector. So the government really understood the impact of this sector, and the upcoming points about the electrical vehicle policies, which India really wants to introduce in the coming 5 to 10 years. So there are a lot of things which are happening here. So what they did was they made a total financial commitment of 570 billion rupees. This is the highest outlay which the government is committed for the auto sector. What happened, or what has happened till now, is that the uh, the the authorities have had a lot of meetings with trade chambers on how do they really want to roll it out. And the idea is that they would like to increase the overall value addition in India. I mean, a lot of companies are really doing assemblies, as they want to call it, that India is mostly doing an assembly, and there is no real value addition which happens in India in a lot of cases. So the idea behind this is to make India a champion country for automotive, and especially electrical vehicles rather. And therefore, such a big outlay has been given here. Department of Heavy Industries has been appointed as the implementation agency. The idea is to give again PLI cashbacks ranging from 2 to 12%, again on a similar model of incremental sales. But then today we don't have a lot of information about this particular policy. Many agencies, companies, and trade chambers are still making representation. Sonia told me before this session also that IGCC is making, or has made, a representation on this particular scheme to the government of India also. So it's a very interesting point, or an interesting scheme which is to be looked forward to. We don't have a lot of information because the policy document is not out, but companies operating in this scheme have something really, really interesting to look forward to. Okay, so now in the interest of time, I would move to the next set of information which I would like to give you. This is on industrial policies, state industrial policies, and I would cover, as I mentioned, three states quickly, which is Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. As I mentioned, Maharashtra had an industrial policy since more than 40-50 years. Every 5 years, the policy is updated, and a good industrial policy has helped Maharashtra quite a lot. We all know that the state has a good quantum of industrial investments, especially FDIs. And the idea in 2019, when the policy was updated, was to continue with the same growth path which Maharashtra had for quite some years, and to continue with the 12 to 13% growth rate in terms of manufacturing sector, and to obviously attract a large amount of investment and to generate jobs. So this was basically the idea behind the policy, which was introduced from April 19 and will continue till March 2025. Um, the change was that they introduced thrust sectors. So the sectors where the government of Maharashtra really wants to put focus upon. And as you can see, the number one was electrical vehicles. This is a sector which is to look forward to for every state. This is included in the thrust sector. Industry 4.0, data centers, IT, ITES has always been on the main umbrella of, or on the main foresight of the government. Then you have nuclear power plants, agro and food processing, aerospace, textiles, logistics. So all these sectors are identified as thrust sectors, important sectors, and you will certainly get much more benefits and incentives if you're operating under these sectors. So what is now the categorization? So how do you basically qualify for incentives if you are a manufacturing company operating in Maharashtra, or rather if you are a company which plans to set up a manufacturing in the state of Maharashtra? So how will you be categorized? So either you can be an MSME or a large scale industry or a mega unit or an ultra mega unit. The entire state of Maharashtra has been categorized in various zones: zone A, B, C, D, D plus, specific areas, non-industrial area. These are basically, so if you look at large cities like Bombay, Pune, Thane, Nasik, so these are all in zone A. When you go slightly outside of the cities into smaller, larger industrial development areas, MIDC areas as we call it in Maharashtra, then zones or areas which are already quite industrialized would fall in category B. Then new and upcoming industrial zones would fall in category C, and category D and non-industrial areas are places where MIDC maybe does not have a proper setup, or these are private land parcels which are outside 50-60 kilometers outside city limits, or closer to smaller cities within Maharashtra. So this is how the entire state has been distributed. So if you want to set up your manufacturing base in zone A or zone B, which is already quite industrialized, then the quantum of benefits is quite low, obviously, because government wants to promote areas where there are less number of industries so that more employment can be generated. So zone A, you have for a large scale, you have 7.5 billion rupees and 1000 minimum number of employment which has to be generated. For mega unit, it is 1500 crores, which is 15 billion rupees, and a minimum employment of 2000 people. Similar are the limits for category B. So if you do an investment of more than 15 billion rupees, which is 1500 crores in and zone B, then you will qualify as a mega unit. So if you do an investment of 7.5 billion Indian rupees, which is 750 crores Indian rupees, in category A or B, then you will fall under the large scale industries. So you have to really see the quantum of investment and the number of employments that you are generating and the zone in which you want to start your manufacturing facility. Based on these three criterias, you would be falling under MSME or a large scale industry or a mega project or an ultra mega project. Okay, and your incentives would depend upon the category under which you basically fall. So let's now discuss the benefits that you can get under the scheme. So as I said, for MSME, there is no, I would say, large subsidy as such which is granted, but what you really get is an interest subsidy, which is calculated on the interest that you pay on term loans that you take for acquiring fixed assets, building plant and machinery, etc., or a minimum of 5% per annum on the term loan, whichever is lower. So the two amounts will be calculated, and whichever is lower will be granted to you. But the subsidy is limited to the total amount of electricity bill which the MSME pays during the year. So this is the interest subsidy portion. This amount of interest would be paid back to you by the government of Maharashtra. Second benefit that you get is electricity duty exemption. In most cases, this is between 7 to 10 years. So once you get your eligibility certificate, you have to make an application to the electricity board, which has the jurisdiction over your factory, and your electricity duty will be exempted for a specific number of years. I don't know, maybe a lot of participants may not be aware that India really has a high electricity duty. I mean, there is always talks about bringing electricity within GST, and people say that oh, why put GST on electricity and make it more expensive? But you have to really look at your power bills closely, and you will find that that most of the state governments have an electricity duty which ranges from 7% to 20%, which is quite high. So it's a big hit on your P&L, and this duty is also not available as an input tax credit. So it's a direct cost to industry and to commercial establishments. So this is something which is available as an exemption to you if you fall under the MSME category. You can also get a stamp duty exemption, 100% stamp duty exemption for your land and building. So if you acquire a property for setting up the factory, you can claim 100% exemption from stamp duty. You also get a power subsidy if you are a unit located in the central part of India, or I would say the east part of Maharashtra, which is Vidarbha, then Marathwada, North Maharashtra. So these districts which are less industrialized, government wants to give you a power subsidy of 1 rupee per unit for 3 years, and for other areas it is 50 paise per unit for 3 years. So this was on MSMEs. If you are a large scale industry, so again you have to look at the zones, zone A, B, C, D. Where exactly do you fall? Again, what you will be entitled to would be an electricity duty exemption. So in category A and B, you can see that this benefit is only available to an EOU unit or an ITBT unit. So if you are a normal DTA unit, then you are not entitled to an electricity duty exemption. You will only get it if you are located in category C, D, or D plus district. For stamp duty exemptions, again, similarly, if you are an ITBT unit or a unit located in an IT park, you will get 100% stamp duty exemption in category A and B zones, and only in category C zones and onwards, you will get 100% stamp duty exemption. Investment promotion subsidy was always one of the most important aspects of the incentives, which are calculated based on the SGST, the net SGST liability of the unit within the state of Maharashtra. So this also would be available to a large scale unit on a first come first serve basis. But what is most interesting for the participants or for the government is always the mega and the ultra mega projects. Like most states, Maharashtra also gives covers mega project under the tailor-made formula. So you have a tailor-made formula you have to apply to the high power committee, and the incentives would be tailor-made based on your requirements. So you have to really make an application and say, I want benefit A, B, C, D, E. I want electricity duty exemption, stamp duty exemption, so and so forth, and then the higher powered committee would consider your application, and again then based on the decisions taken by the committee, the MOU is signed between the state government and the unit, and the eligibility certificate is issued. Moving on to Tamil Nadu, this is a very interesting state for a lot of European companies nowadays. Tamil Nadu has, I would say, come up quite well in the last couple of years, and a lot of focus was given on industrialization, and the targets which were set were quite similar to Maharashtra, I would say, with a higher growth rate. And the new government in Tamil Nadu has also sort of continued with the same momentum. In 2019, the policy was revisited, and in 2021 they have come out with a new policy altogether, which still has some elements of the old policy, but then is revamped at a lot of levels. Apart from the industrial policy, Tamil Nadu also has other policies like a startup policy, electrical vehicle policy, aerospace policy, textile policy, food processing policy, biotechnology policy. So you have and also there's an MSME policy which is separate. So you can really look at the industrial policy, and you can also look at the benefits which are given under these respective policies if you fall under these specific sectors. So it's a lot of material, I would say, that you have to you have to go through. But then the idea is that to give thrust to specific sectors via separate policies for those sectors, and for all the other companies, you have the general industrial policy. Now, I will only be discussing the industrial policy 2021. Here, the units which will make an application would get classified under various categories. So a sub-large category would be 500 million to 3 billion, which is 300 crores. Large would be 300 crores to 500 crores. Mega would be 500 crores to 5,000 crores, which is INR 5 billion to 50 billion. And ultra mega would be more than INR 50 billion rupees. If you make an investment which is within these limits or beyond these limits, accordingly you will fall within the respective categories, and this investment has to be made within the period which is mentioned on the right hand side. So for ultra mega you get 7 years, and for mega, large and sub large you get 4 years for making this quantum of agreed investments with the state government. Okay, so what will you get? So if, for example, you agree to set up your factory in Tamil Nadu, and you are ready to make the quantum of investments and generate the employment as agreed within the framework of the industrial policy, what will you get? So the first and foremost and most important item is the capital subsidy. This is a, I would say, a huge benefit. So if, for example, you are a large, you fall under the large category in Tamil Nadu, then you can get a capital subsidy of between 0 to 12% of your eligible fixed assets. So for example, if you are in category A, obviously you don't get, you are eligible for no capital subsidy, it is 0. But in category B, it is 10%, and category C, it is 12%. For example, if you're mega unit, so you are making an investment more than 500 crores in any area in Tamil Nadu, for example. So in category A, you get 10%, in category B, you get 12%, and in category C, you get 15%. In capital subsidy calculated on your investments. So if you are, for example, making an investment of 1,000 crores, you can get 15% of that back from the state government, which will be paid over a period of 10 years in equal installments. So this is a huge amount. I mean, companies who would set up their bases would recover a large portion of the investments back directly from the government, based on which is paid in cash directly to your account. So a big benefit, and this does not depend on your sales. This does not depend on any other parameter. This basically depends upon the investments that you make, where do you make, and the employment that you generate. So very important benefit to be taken into account. Then stamp duty exemption that you get for sub large, it is 50%. In all other categories you get also 50% for land which is promoted for industrial use by SIPCOT in category A, B, and in C you get 100% stamp duty exemption for large, mega, and ultra mega. SGST reimbursement, this was there in the old scheme. So most of the states still have such a scheme where the government basically pays you 100% of the SGST liability. So in GST, as you know, when you are making a local sales, a sale within the specific state, you have to pay a CGST and an SGST. The CGST goes to the central government and the SGST goes to the state government. So the state government was ready to pay you 100% of your SGST liability, net SGST liability, over a period of 15 years. But in case you opt for capital subsidy, this amount is not payable. And most of the companies obviously would go for a capital subsidy, generally I would say, because they would want to cater to the entire country from your manufacturing location. And therefore you may have more of an IGST liability than a CGST, SGST liability. What are the other benefits that you can get under the scheme? You have a training subsidy of 4,000 rupees per worker. You have land cost subsidy. You have quality certification incentives, which is 50% of the total cost that you incur for an ISO or an ISI certification or a BIS certification. Then you have green industry subsidy. You have electricity duty subsidy, which is a tax exemption for 5 years on electricity tax, which we just discussed even in Maharashtra. So you have a whole list of items that you can get and claim from the state government. Apart from this, you also have a situation where if you are an FDI, if you are not an Indian group, you are purely a foreign group, you can also get something called as a transport subsidy for moving your factory from, say, any country outside of India, and you bring it within India. So there are some tailor-made options also for companies which are bringing in FDI. Okay, next would be Gujarat industrial policy. And I would immediately go into the categorization because the objective and the background remains the same in every state. Here also the categorization has been done based on MSME. So if you are falling under the definition of MSME as defined in the Gujarat MSME Facilitation Act, then you would qualify as MSME. For large mega and ultra mega, if you have an investment which is more than the MSME criteria given under the act, so then you will fall under large or mega. And then this is again divided into sunrise sectors or thrust sectors as we call it, and the general sector. So you have to again see what is the investment that you are making and which sector you basically fall under. Now, Gujarat was one of the first states to introduce the subsidy based on the fixed capital investment. This was done in 2019-20, I would say, and the new policy basically now is completely based on the percentage of fixed capital investment. So again, the entire state of Gujarat, similar fashion, has been categorized in 1, 2, and 3 districts. So talukas have been provided, and based on the category of the sector or the district where you will open up your manufacturing concern, you will get a percentage of subsidy which is calculated based on your fixed capital investment that you make. So if you are falling under the general sector, so on the right hand side you can basically see the sectors which are categorized as core or thrust sectors, which again include the similar, I would say, type of industries: auto components, industrial machinery, electrical vehicle, green energy, eco-friendly, composite material, EOU. So you can see that in the entire country you have all the states which are focusing on these specific industries and trying to give an impetus to these sectors, because they know that these sectors bring in a large amount of investments and these sectors create a large number of employment as well. So if you are falling under these sectors, you can get the benefit which is given for the thrust sector, which is the higher percentage of incentives based on FCI. So category 1, 12%. For thrust sector, category 2, 10%, category 3, 6%. So less industrial sectors are or districts are covered in category 1, medium industrialized districts are covered in category 2, and least or rather most industrialized districts are covered in category 3. The most interesting part of the Gujarat policy is that there is no upper limit of incentive that can be given to a specific unit. So what they have done is they have said that total benefit or subsidy that will be given for 1 year cannot exceed 400 million INR. This is 40 crore Indian rupees. And so, for example, if you are bringing an investment of say 5,000 crores into your manufacturing concern, this is a big number, I would say, for any company. But for example, let's take an example. If you're bringing in such a huge investment into the state of Gujarat and you are operating in a general sector, let's say, so the total benefit that will be given to you would be 10% of this huge investment of 5,000 crores, and this would be divided equally within a period of 10 years. And you can see that in 10 years, even if you take the maximum limit of 40 million rupees, you will still not complete the total entitlement to you. So in such cases, the government says that we will increase the number of years to 20 years, so that so you can take the benefit for a total period of 20 years if this is the case. And even if this is not over in 20 years, we will then raise the limit of 40 million INR to a higher number. So they are not limiting the total amount of subsidy that you can get under the scheme, which is really interesting for me. Moving on, you have the MSME sector. Here again, the benefits are more on the interest part, which is calculated on the term loan amount, and an interest subsidy again, which is 7%. I would say quite high for category 1 districts. Okay, so I would unfortunately rush with a few slides because we don't have a lot of time. But as I said, see, at the end of the day, the idea is that you know that these sort of investments or other incentives are available on various subsidies from the state governments, and what you really need to do is analyze your specific investment criteria. What is the amount that you are bringing in as an investment into a manufacturing concern? Which sector do you operate for? And based on that, you have to calculate or basically make an application and seek incentives from the state government in which you want to set up your manufacturing base. Okay, moving on to the last part of my session. This is incentives under the foreign trade policy. Now, I would say this is an area which has been the most confusing area in the last 16, 17 months. We all know that the central government sort of was in doubts of how to continue with MEIS and SEIS. These were the schemes which have been taken up and have been litigated by US in WTO, and India has already lost that case in WTO, and they have decided to file an appeal. But what has been decided or what has been adjudicated by WTO is that MEIS, EOU, SEZ, these schemes are not WTO compliant, non-WTO compliant, because they only promote exports from India and are not equivalent to domestic sales done by similar units. So they being not WTO compliant, India has to sooner or later maybe do away with these schemes. And at least on the MEIS front, the government was very clear that they can sort of replace it with a new scheme which is WTO compliant. And this scheme was a RODTEP scheme, remission of duties and taxes on exported product. Why this is WTO compliant is that this scheme envisages only remission of those duties and taxes which are inbuilt into the pricing of the exported product. So as we know, we have electricity duty, which cannot be taken as an input tax credit. You have stamp duty, you have mandi taxes, you have some specific state taxes, you have all those local taxes. For example, you have now taxes on petroleum products. So these taxes are not available as a tax credit to the government, to the business, and they become a part of the cost of the product which is exported. So the government's idea is to calculate a rate of RODTEP which will be given for each and every industry separately based on the taxes which become a part of the cost of the exported product. So committee has already been formed. They are in the process of formulating the rates for each and every sector. Latest news reports say that the rates can be notified within 7 days to 2 weeks, most probably, because the scheme is already implemented from 1st of January 2021. I hope all the companies who are exporting products are already endorsing their shipping bills with RODTEP, and as soon as the rates are notified, hopefully the sanction of funds will start also. But in the meantime, MEIS has been stopped, which we all know, and for SEIS, which is a scheme for service exporters, this is really not within the framework of anyone to understand, because for financial year 2019-20, the government has not even come out with a rate notification, let alone financial year 2021, which is also over. So for 2 years, the service exporters, which was also one of the sectors hugely impacted due to the lockdowns. So you had the hospitality industry, you had all these service sectors which are very, very largely impacted. But the government has just not come out with a notification for the rates for the scrips that will be granted under the SEIS scheme. But again, the news reports say that it should be out in some time. So the hopes are still high. Then, as we know, recently the foreign trade policy was pushed till 30th September. The existing foreign trade policy, which was applicable from 1st of April 2015 to March 2020, has been already extended 2 times, and the new policy should be out on 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of October. And this would be the most interesting things, 1st of Oc thing to see for exporters, because as I said, it will seal the fate of EOU units or companies who take EPCG advanced authorizations on a routine basis, because not EPCG but at least advanced authorization in EOU, these schemes are under question at the WTO level, and the government may want to discontinue these schemes and launch schemes which are WTO compliant. And one of these schemes is already launched, which we know is called as MOOR, manufacturing and other operations in a warehouse scheme. This scheme allows factories to convert their existing factory locations into a customs bonded warehouse, and in such a customs bonded warehouse you are allowed to bring capital goods and raw materials without payment of customs duty. So this is quite akin to EOU unit scheme, or other EOU scheme, but obviously there are quite a lot of dissimilarities also. But this MOOR scheme is WTO compliant, and I would say it is for future, and EOU and advanced authorization may be discontinued very soon. Yes, so what do we finally understand from these slides is that when you are planning to set up your base in or a manufacturing unit in India, you have to really consider and base your decision based on timelines, the amount of investment, where your customers are located. So accordingly, the state where you want to set up your factory, you have to align them with regulatory laws, and then based on this, you have to basically see what is the total amount of incentives that you can take from several state and central government authorities. So for example, you are a company which is into pharmaceuticals, wanting to invest 1000 plus crores in the state of Tamil Nadu, from where you would also undertake exports. If this is your business model, so then you can make an application to the state of Tamil Nadu, fall under the mega unit category, get state capital subsidy of 15%. You can also get open your manufacturing location in a customs bonded warehouse, which under the MOOR scheme, as I mentioned, you can import capital goods and raw material duty free in India. This would tremendously reduce your total quantum of investment that you will have to make in India. And at the same time, you apply under the PLI scheme, get PLI incentives from the central government, and as an exporter you can also take benefits of MEIS or RODTEP under the foreign trade policy. So this is how it really has to work, that you see how you are set up, what is your base, and accordingly make an application or at least seek incentives and subsidies at various levels under the huge number of policies that we have for various governments. Good. So I think with this I have sort of completed my whole discussion on the schemes that we have. I think I have overshot the total time limit, but then I have a confirmation that we can go ahead and answer a few questions. And unfortunately, because the time is very less, I don't know, I'll have to just check again. But what I would like to do is take up a few questions which we had received before the start of the session, because these were very interesting questions, and therefore I would hopefully answer a few of them. A lot of questions, I would say, and quite understandable also. So the first question was, what are the subsidies and benefits for capital investments by center of excellence, example engineering technical institutes or R&D centers? So for such companies, there is specifically no incentive under the PLI scheme. It is mostly for manufacturing and not for services. I'm assuming these are service centers. But then what I know of is in Gujarat industrial policy, you can look at a 30% subsidy of the project cost, or rather on plant and machinery, up to a maximum of 5 crores. This is what is available. There are some other benefits which are also available in the Gujarat industrial policy, so you have to really see where you are exactly located. Even under the Tamil Nadu industrial policy, there is a specific corpus which has been given to R&D centers, so you can basically understand whether you fall for that particular incentive also. But apart from that, if you are an exporter of service, you can certainly seek SEIS, which is unfortunately not there today, but then certainly under the new policy something will come up. Also under income tax, you have some benefits for the units operating under the R&D sector. Earlier we had a 200% or 150% additional deduction given, and today also I think there is some benefit under the income tax scheme. So you have to really analyze all these laws and see what best you can come out with. Are there any rebates on import duties for import of equipment for manufacturing medical goods? So here I think the question is not very clear, but then it really depends upon the HSN code of the machinery that you are planning to import. As you know, there are the exemptions are based on the HSN code. So you have to really look at the customs notifications. Normally for machines, the rate of customs duty are lower, so you can really look at based on the HSN codes. But in case you're an exporter, you can certainly look at an EPCG scheme where you can import the equipment without payment of customs duty, or you can also look at the Moore scheme, as I mentioned. Even if you don't have any exports, you can set up or convert your existing factory under the Moore scheme, and you can import all of these goods duty free. What we are an engineering, global engineering and manufacturing service company having HO in Gurgaon and workshop in Bhubaneswar. Workshop is manufacturing fabricated items for steel plants equipments. Are we eligible for PLI? I think here what I understand is you are into the steel sector, and the PLI for specialty steel sector is still not out. So I think you will have to wait some more time and look at basically follow the PLI for specialty steel sector. Whenever that is out, you will have to basically look at your entitlement accordingly under the specific scheme. Question next is update on the FTA negotiation. I am assuming this is an free trade agreement between India and EU that you are talking about. Everyone is waiting for this particular FTA to happen, because this will be a big boost to both the set of groups, for EU as well as for India. This will be a big game changer when the FTA is finalized. What I can tell you right now is that in the last 1 year, you must have read the news reports. The negotiations on the FTA have gained a lot of momentum. I would say. Even with UK, the negotiations are going on. But currently, I believe the two groups have quite a lot of differences that have to be sort of addressed. So, for example, the requirement from the EU side was to give a preferential treatment to automobiles and auto components which come from EU to India. As you know, in India, if you import a CBU, a completely built car, the customs duty rates are more than 100%. So it's sort of not even within the umbrella of where EU wants the tax rates to be. EU also wanted preferential treatment to wines and other alcoholic beverages which come from EU, and there was also a demand to allow legal services from the firms in EU locations into India. At the same time, what India wanted was that they wanted preferential treatment for the professionals, the Indian professionals, a visa regime where these Indian professionals can really operate and work out of EU, and some other requirements which India has already communicated. There were some topics which I know already, which was FDI in insurance, for example, or single brand retail. These things have already been sorted. India has liberalized these regime in about 1 or 2 years back on single brand retail, and very recently on insurance in the last budget. So these things are already in the pipeline, but I believe that the real FTA can still be minimum of 1 or 2 years from today. Let's see. I mean, we can just hope. Interested to know more about incentives for automobile for MSME. As I said, you'll have to wait, basically, because PLI is not yet out for automotive sector. We are 100% EOU after withdrawal of MEIS. Is there any incentive for us? Yes, the RODTEP scheme has been introduced. As an EOU, you are allowed to take MEIS. So you were also allowed to take RODTEP scheme. You can still continue to do your exports under the endorsement of RODTEP. And when the rates are notified, you can basically still get those benefits. But as I mentioned, EOU scheme is something which you have to really look at. This has already been disputed, and we really don't know what will be the future of EOU in the coming years, whether the government would notify some sort of transitionary provisions from EOU to other schemes which are notified under the new policy or under the Moore scheme. So this is really something to look forward to. Next question. is, yeah, would like to understand what are the subsidy schemes given by government to SME sector. SME sector, I have already tried to cover the benefits which are available to the MSME sector under the various state industrial policies. In Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, all have an MSME policy, or the incentives available to MSMEs are given in the respective industrial policies. So if you are setting up a manufacturing in the MSME zone, or other within the MSME limits, you can certainly seek incentives, which I have already tried to cover in my presentation. You can also seek liberalized funding from banks at lower rates of interest. You also have the MSME D Act, which also outlines some benefits of seeking a quick payment from your vendor, from your customers, etc. So all of these laws have to be taken into account for MSMEs. Okay, we would like to know if there are any benefit or subsidy for engineering and software engineering companies post COVID-19. There is really no change for software companies, especially post COVID-19. Government brought in some relaxations for work from home. There were some policy regulatory restrictions that the services have to be provided from within the specific zones, STPI, SEZ, etc. But they have relaxed those conditions. But apart from that, there is no real change after COVID-19. Production-linked incentive scheme for steel sector, I've already mentioned that it is still pending. We'll have to see that. Can we avail benefits of PLI for investments done during 2019 to 21? Very interesting question, I would say. In general, my answer would be no, because for most policies which I have seen, the base year has been 2021 when the PLI was introduced, or 21-22, but it really would depend upon the scheme. 1920 certainly PLI was not there, so I really don't see that that particular year will be considered for investments. For 2021, you have to really see which scheme you are opting for, and whether the base year is 2021 considered under that scheme or not. Okay, so want to know more about large scale industry subsidies. I think I've again covered the most of them in my PPT for under the state incentives, and also PLI. Most of the incentives are for large scale industries only. Then is there any incentive and subsidies for product upgrading and UL and C certification for MSME unit? So I think here it's a very specific question, and you have to look at specific industrial policies. What I have noted down is that in Maharashtra industrial policy, there is a subsidy of 5% on additional capital equipment, which is subject to a total of 25 lakh rupees, and some subsidy on quality certification, which I covered in my slide also. So these are subsidies are still there. Based on MSME, you don't get, as I said, don't get a large amount of benefit, but it's sort of restricted on several fronts. Last two questions I would like to cover. What are the basis of provisioning of PLI? How would furniture industry of India ask for PLI? A very interesting question. Furniture is something which is on the agenda of the Indian government. There have been news reports and talks about bringing furniture into the licensing regime, because India imports a lot of furniture from China and from all these countries, and India really wants to set up furniture manufacturing base in India so as to reduce the import dependence. There is also an issue of quality which has been brought up in several discussions, and therefore the licensing regime is something which is on the agenda of the government, where they would like to bring in quality certifications for import of furniture in India. But what I understand is that based on the discussions between DP, IIT and the trade chambers or the trade bodies, there is no PLI which is being discussed, or it is not in agenda for the furniture sector as of now. But you can seek, you can make representations to the DPIIT, and maybe this topic can be sort of reignited if there are good proposals from the trade chambers and bodies. Last question: what are the incentives available for EOUs? I think I've again covered it, but if you are an EOU unit, you can import capital goods and raw material duty free in India. You can buy goods locally from within India, which are available, and the GST on such procurements are available as a refund either to you as an EOU unit or to the supplier of such EOU units as a deemed export. You can also claim MEIS, RODTEP, which I recently mentioned. You can get these benefits also, but again, to keep in mind that EOU scheme may soon be discontinued in future because of the WTO litigation that is going on. So I think I've completely exhausted my time, and I hope this whole session was interesting to all of you. A lot of participants I can still see are still there, so I hope I was able to make it interesting for all of you, and I was able to at least give you some information which you can take back and basically evaluate based on your own parameters on how exactly do you fall under these specific schemes. So I think now it is over to you, Sana, for the final words from IGCC.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ketan. Can we take up 2-3 more questions that has come in from the audience right now? Is it okay?
I'm fine with it. I mean, if we have time, I'm okay.
Yes, sure. So the first question is, I'll just take up 2-3 questions. Are the state policy documentations in local state languages?
So they are generally in both languages. You will have the state policies in the local language as well as in English. So the three policies that I covered, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Maharashtra, they are available in the local language as well as in English. So it should not really be a problem for people to really understand them.
Okay. Are these subsidies negotiable as in past subject to interpretation of the proposal or strictly objective?
See, it really depends on how do you see this question. If you look at subsidies for mega units, for example, in Tamil Nadu, as I mentioned, if you are making an investment which is more than 500 crores, you qualify as a mega unit. In Maharashtra, the limits are slightly higher, but in case you are a mega unit, then the subsidies and incentives are tailor-made. You basically the process is that you make an application to the state government. So, for example, in Maharashtra, you make an application to MIDC. In Tamil Nadu, you make an application to guidance, and basically the process is started from there, and your proposal is put forward before the empowered committee for negotiation. Then you meet the empowered committee. You basically put up a paper that I want so and so incentives. I want, say for example, there is only a 15% subsidy given. You can seek 20% subsidy, and if the state government is ready to give it to you, then it's based on the negotiations. But you have to really put forward your requirements. If you are a mega unit, it is a really interesting sort of a job to do, because you have to understand the psyche of the state governments of what exactly do they want to promote and what is your own requirement, and try to negotiate the best deal possible for the investments that you are bringing in the respective states. But as I said, these complexities and at the same time the flexibilities are there only for mega units in the state industrial policies. For any unit which is below mega unit, you have a very clear cut guideline as to what benefit that you will get, what percentage of benefit that you will get, and there is no sort of a discussion around more or less out of what is prescribed.
All right, thank you. The next one is solar PLI. Were any detailed guidelines issued
Yes,
for solar
absolutely.
PLI?
The solar PLI detailed policy was issued, and it was, I would say, one of the most complicated policy documents that we had seen, where see, for example, we as chartered accountants and lawyers are more akin to the tax and legal laws, but the policy documents are very, very complicated in terms of technical data, which the government really wants to promote based on the feedback that they have given. So there was a very detailed policy document which was out. Applications were made, and I think, as I've already mentioned, for solar PV, the last date was 30th of June 2021, which is already gone. But as I said, this is still a flexible area, and I think this still can get open up if some of the participants which are selected still get disqualified, or the government gives more outlay to the scheme. Then you can really look forward to it again.
All right. Any scheme for silicon chemical products in upcoming future?
What? Sorry, which products?
Silicon chemical products.
So for chemical products, unfortunately, I am not very familiar about silicon chemical products, what exactly would get covered here, but I am assuming this is chemical. And when you talk about chemical, you have to really see whether this falls under one of the PLI schemes for the chemical sector. For the chemical sector, as I mentioned in my scheme, there was a policy document which was out for one of the sectors, and for pharmaceutical sector, the scheme is still open. So you really have to see where exactly your products fall under which sector of the PLI scheme, and then consider accordingly.
Okay, we'll just take the last question. Are these applicable for existing companies? And if they are relocating to a new facility, something like a brownfield project in capital goods manufacturing in Gujarat, where can we find this? Any website for this information?
See, I'm assuming you're talking about the Gujarat State Industrial Policy, or maybe let's make it a bit general for everyone, because it's an important question for a lot of participants. For existing companies, for example, what if I am relocating from an existing location to a new location? What if I am making a new investment altogether, which is a significant enhancement of my current capacities? So in such cases, you are certainly, for example, in Maharashtra, you have a concept of existing unit and a new unit. If you're an existing unit and you are making a additional capacity enhancement of more than 25%, etc., you can still seek more subsidies from the state government under the expansion mode. Similar policies are also there in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. You can really look at if you're making more capital investments as compared to the existing investments that you already have, then you can make an application under the scheme. For an existing unit which has already made the application and the commercial production has already started, for such companies, there is unfortunately no, you cannot go back and make a backdated application to the state government.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Khetan. And a lot of people have actually asked for the presentation. So,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen, we will be sharing the presentation with everyone in the next 2 to 3 working days. And with this, we will bring our Q&A session to an end. Also, all the other questions that you all have put up and we were not able to take it up live, we assure you that your questions will be shared with the speaker, with Mr. Khetan, and he will get back to you.
Absolutely.
And now may I ask, now may I ask my colleague, Ms. Mehta, to proceed with the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks for today's webinar. So on behalf of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, we would like to thank Bogies and Partner for having put forth such a magnificent session on governmental incentives and subsidies for manufacturing companies in India. We would like to compliment Mr. Anand Khetan for explaining the important features on the subject matter. I'm sure that this session shall benefit industries and business financially through the government production linked incentive scheme. So once again, thank you, Mr. Khetan, for coming on board. Further, we would like to convey a big thank you to our esteemed guests who, despite their busy schedule, have always taken out their valuable time to attend our sessions. Also, this webinar would not have been possible without the serious efforts of my colleagues from the events department. So thank you, Sana, Munaz, Nikhil, and Samiha. In the end, would like to thank our Deputy Director General, Ms. Sonia Prashad, for having accepted to give us an insight of the webinar through her opening address. Dear audience, a recorded link along with the presentation of today's session will be shared with you all. Please do write to us sharing your valuable feedback. Also, do visit our website to know more about our upcoming webinar, and we look forward to your present and active participation with the same spirit as always. So thank you once again, everyone. Stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye and have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
And once again,
Bye.
sorry, we are still getting questions if the presentation will be shared. Yes, the presentation will be shared in the next 2 to 3 working days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.